Thank you so much for joining Be the Hero and Rescue Yourself with Kelly Fullman, where I get the opportunity to interview and talk with some of my heroes that I have met through my professional and personal life. And so today I get to talk with someone that is right up the road and has become a dear friend of mine and is also what I lovingly say, legally get to beat on my child and now husband.
As long as you sign the waiver.
I signed the waiver. Chris Cagle, he and I met at the gym, and he owns Fight Right Martial Arts. And today we're going to talk about self-defense. Self-defense for your person, self-defense for your children, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about bullying and overcoming bullying. But thank you, Chris, so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
And I'm excited to have you here. So tell me a little bit about Fight Right and why Fight Right. What happened? How did you get to this point and become your own business owner?
Oh my goodness. The short answer is Jesus. The long answer is I didn't want to, and then Jesus told me to. So there's no really short way to go about doing this. But I'll give you the kind of like Reader's Digest version. I took an interest in martial arts. I mean, from like literally out of the womb. I was just always something that I've been drawn to. And started formally training around the age of like 9 or so. That was in 1994. Started competing in, I think, 1997 or so. Competed all the way up until 2007,
Wow.
I think. Of course, there's a plethora of stories in between then and now, but I worked for another martial arts school for about a decade.
Okay.
Ended up having a falling out with that particular business owner who was a good friend and mentor. And I was done with the martial arts community. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And man, I was like fat and happy for like 3 years. And I say fat because I gained like 50 pounds after I quit. And it was great.
It was like all the donuts and brownies in the world.
I met my wife during that time period. I got a quote unquote real job with medical benefits, which is something I had never had in my adult life, and I was like, oh, this is what people are talking about. Benefits? What are those? 401k? That's a thing? So after about 3 years of doing that, I was just having my quiet time one morning, which I try to do regularly. And I just heard that still small voice that yells at you, which is, a contradictory of terms. But if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I heard it tell me to start my own martial arts school, and I was pissed. So pissed. I didn't want to do it. I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm fat. I'm out of shape. No.
I'm happy.
No, I'm not doing this. And this was 6 months after I got married. Wow. And I was mad for about a week and kept it to myself. That's usually how I process things. When I get upset, I get quiet and still. And then finally, I told my wife about it. She was like, "That's a great idea."
You're like, "Why did you have to do agree?"
And that pissed me off even more. But at that point, I was like, okay, like I feel like I've been on my walk with God long enough to like know when I need to be obedient. And I had been like, I heard someone say once that delayed obedience is still disobedience, and that kept like going in my head. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll do this, right? So I took my fat butt up to the nearest gym because I didn't have any money. I didn't have any students. I had this word from God and a supporting wife, which I had been praying for.
Which is 80% of the battle.
Oh my goodness. So I walked into this gym, and of course it's owned by this wonderful Christian couple at the time. And it was at Denton Fitness Center. And it's changed owners since then. Still owned by a wonderful Christian man who ended up helping me with my business journey. And it all kind of comes full circle the way it does. And I walked in, and I was like, I was trying to be obedient, but like my outer persona was not jiving with the obedience, right? So I was just kind of like, I didn't sound like I believed in what I needed to do.
Like that reluctant kid.
Yeah. Go give your grandma a hug. I don't want to. It was like that.
Right.
So I walked in and I essentially said something along the lines of, "Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a martial artist. I don't look like a martial artist at all. I'm fat and happy, right?" So, and I was like, "I'm a martial artist. I'm looking to start my own business. I don't have any money. I don't have any students, but I promise I'm really good at what I do and I'm awesome. You should let me teach here." And she said, "Okay." And I was like, "You gotta be freaking kidding me. This is not how life works. This is not how business works. None of this makes sense," which is how God works.
Right.
So, we came up with, I don't even remember what the deal was. It was like, I'll give you, I think it was 25% of the tuition that I make from my students. Like in exchange for this space, I'll give you 25% or whatever I make, right? And in 6 months, I had 50 students.
No way.
It exploded. And it wasn't because I'm a brilliant marketer or because I'm an amazing martial artist. It was just, you do what God says and amazing things happen, right? And it wasn't anything that I did. I was just I was just trying to be obedient. And what's funny is within that 6-month time frame, the owner of the gym came to me and she was like, "So your agreement's about up and we're going to have to ask you to leave because people are like canceling their gym membership because of the space that you're taking up." And from a business standpoint, I was like, that makes perfect sense. Like, I totally understand. So she was so kind. The couple was so kind about it because they were like, "We need to ask you to leave, but we like you a lot and what you're doing for our gym." So it was this weird dynamic, which I totally understood. So I was like, okay. So we looked at like 3 or 4 different other places, and every single one of them fell through. And the space we were in was fantastic. It was 3,000 square feet.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which was perfect for what we do. And a gentleman whose kids I was training at the time, he owns a music company in Denton. So shout out to the Music Academy.
Nice.
Yeah, Scott Himmel, fantastic man, fantastic family. I was training, I think, 2 of his children at the time. And he was like, "Hey, I've got a space out in Crossroads, up 380. We've got like a little orchestra room in there. Why don't you just rent some space for me? And you'll be fine." And I was like, "I really don't want to do that because it's 30 minutes in the opposite direction of 100% of my clientele." And I'm like, I'm doing all the numbers and the math and like talking to mentors in my field. And they were like, it was some weird statistic that some weird math person had figured out. I'm not that type of person. But it was like, for every extra mile you move, you can expect to lose like 1% of your business.
I just know Dallas Fort Worth people, and they have a certain amount of radius that they're willing to drive to go somewhere. And
absolutely, I'm like that.
Yeah, I know.
If I can't walk to my gym, I don't want to go.
It doesn't take a brilliant math person to. It's just common sense.
So that happened, and I was like, I'm going to lose so much of my business just moving here. So I was like desperately looking for other avenues, and he was offering me a great deal. And I just don't want to do this. It's literally like a quarter of the space, and it's this far away. Like, I don't want to do this. And every other avenue that we tried to go, like, fell through. Like, some of them at the last minute.
Wow.
Like the place I wanted the most, which was centered around sports and family and blah, 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 blah. It fell through. And I was like, oh, this is... okay, I guess this is where we're going. We went there. I didn't lose any customers. It was insane.
Crazy.
Right? Didn't lose any customers. Fast forward 8 months later, I was praying about our having our own space, and God guided me to this crap hole building. It was a mess. It's still a mess. We've just made it look real nice on the outside. And I remember saying, like, man, this is a crap hole. He was like, yeah, but it's your crap hole, so take care of it. So I remember like going up there and just like walking through the space and praying through it I had just read a book that had talked about like praying circles around what God's given you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I've never done that before, so I guess we'll just do that. So I'm like stepping over rat feces and trash and all this stuff, just at peace. Like, okay, I think this is where we're supposed to be. And we got the space. And
I think I remember the day at the gym
yeah.
when you got the space.
Yeah.
You're like, here we go.
Here we go. And boy, howdy, it was a here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, long story short, all of the right people were brought to make that space like just to be what it is today. And I can't tell you like how many thousands of dollars were saved because people donated their time and their expertise and their resources. It's just every time I walk in there, I'm just like, okay, here we go.
Here we go.
This is what we're doing. It's awesome. So
that is awesome. I didn't know the whole story. I know that it was a big leap of faith.
Huge.
And you talked a little bit about it at the gym, but when we're at the gym, sometimes we talk and jabber, but not get that deep into stuff. So wow, that's and
that's the short version.
That's like, a leap.
It's crazy.
It's a hike, like more than a high kick away. That was a leap across something.
I mean, this is 3 years in development.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long since. That's crazy.
Almost 4. Yeah.
Because I got the call to do it about 6 months after I got married.
That's crazy. So, you teach martial arts to kids and adults, and then you also have self-defense classes as well. So I want to separate those two out. So when I brought my son for the first time to martial arts, there's this whole misconception about martial arts classes and what you think your kiddo is going to learn. And I think you're quite unorthodox in your teaching, but you teach some real life skills so tell me your philosophy on teaching martial arts and how that has developed over time.
Hoy. Oh man. Any martial artists listening to this know the tradition and the formalities and the hierarchy that is in the martial arts community, as well as the ego, and I'll even use the word narcissism. That can be a commonality that's found in this. So when I took this definite leap of faith, it was more about like, okay, well, these are the gifts that I have been given, I've taken this passion, I've honed it. Now, like, what does God want me to do with it? So I spent a lot of time like really prayerfully considering, and I don't mean to come off as like somebody who just like sits in my house and prays all the time. Like, I've got people praying for me. I've got people who work with me. I've got people who tell me, no, Chris, that's a dumb idea. We're not doing that. So I've got so many people in my life that just keep me within the boundaries, godly people in my life that keep me within the confines of what is best. Not for our business, but for taking care of the people that are associated with our business. And that's what it's all about. Like on our logo, it says empowering our community, which is kind of the word we got. I say we, wasn't me, that we got for our business. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because that was what I got. And I was like, okay, well, that's nice. What do I do with that? Because I'm really good at kicking people in the mouth. And
I don't think that empowers.
And people don't like to be kicked in the mouth. So there was a little bit of a process of like what that looked like, and I kept coming back to life and death is in the power of what you say. Like, that's in your words. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? He's like, I want you to empower people with your words. I mean talking to me like I'm a little kid, because I'm a little kid and need to be smacked on the head and said, hey, pay attention, I love you. Like, this is what I'm saying. And of course, he has to say it a million times before I actually hear it, which is how I feel with my students sometimes, which I'm sure is how you feel as a parent.
And you soon to be.
And soon to be, yes. So that's really what it became about. It was like, we're empowering people by literally using our words to encourage them. Because if you really break it down, what everybody needs is love and encouragement. Yep. Everyone. This is regardless of race, gender, creed, belief. Like, everybody needs love and encouragement. And if I can use the skill set that I have to bring about love and encouragement, that's my role.
Yep.
Like, that's what I'm there to do. So it's more about that than it is about self-defense. That's a whole nother tangent that I could like squirrel off on, and I'm trying to stay focused on the question you asked me. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. No,
okay.
and that's the philosophy that I absolutely love about your martial arts concept is love and encouragement, because whether you're an adult coming at the first time and kind of nervous about what's going on in the class, or whether you're a kiddo that is shy, which I know one individual that I was told that she was shyer than all get out Gabby.
Yeah.
And then Terry handed her over, and this kid is not shy anymore many years later. But that gave her the confidence and the encouragement and the power to kind of believe in herself and just kind of step out there and be strong. Not just physically, but here.
Absolutely.
And here. Yeah. Too. So that's and when I and everybody, Terry wore me down about bringing Reese to you, and you just showing up and being kind every day and just saying hi. And then a couple of summers ago, Reese was working out in the gym, and you were yelling at him and telling him to get moving. I was like, man, I've got to bring him. At some point, when we have time, and he has time in the evenings, I've got to bring him. And he's been with you for a couple of months, and I've seen a change.
That's awesome.
I've seen a huge difference. And now my husband's coming to you. Like, I don't know what kind of, I told you, I was like, what kind of Jedi power do you have? But I'm glad it's something that they're doing together. So on the martial arts side, let's move into bullying. I know you do a lot of classes with bullies, with kiddos, and with COVID and stuff, things have kind of come to a screeching halt. But once things kind of lighten up and your bullying classes start again, what is your bullying class all about? How did you get it all started?
Sure. So I'm trying to decide where to start with answering that question. So I grew up in what I call the ghetto of North Dallas. Mm-hmm. It is no longer the ghetto of North Dallas. The spot where my house used to be, that I lived in for 20 years before I moved out, I think it sold for like $1.6 million, and they tore the house down, built a $2 million home. Like, I drive through that neighborhood sometimes, and I don't even recognize it. Wow. I mean, it's beautiful just the way that it's grown, but when I was there, not so much. And I have a love-hate relationship with North Dallas. Right. Like, I mean, I love that I grew up there, and I would not do it again. Yeah. So me and my family, I'm one of 5. I have 4 sisters. The running joke is that's why I learned how to fight. Yeah. Because you can only get, your toenails painted so many times before you're like, I'm done. You need to back up, right? So, I mean, that's
not pink.
Right? That's the running joke, but I grew up in a predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I was the minority. Mm-hmm. And as a result of being the minority, I got bullied a lot. Yeah. And you see that, I mean, it could have been the opposite end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. You see that anytime there's a minority class, and in that scenario, I was the minority class. So, I mean, I was bullied specifically from like 5th grade to 7th grade. I mean, like, just this 2-year span of getting chased home from school, getting spit on in the hallway. Wow. I mean, just the constant berating of just I begged my mom to like just keep me home from school. And I just got bullied a lot. And one day I just had enough. And in my experience, when you see the victims of bullies, one of 2 things happen. They either commit suicide or they start to stand up for themselves. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that I snapped in the direction of taking care of myself. Yep. But I was in the hallway at school. I was in middle school. This was 7th grade. And again, this like predominantly Hispanic and Black community. And there's this one particular guy that just kept picking on me. And I've been this tall since about halfway through 7th grade. So, yeah, I mean, I stuck out like a sore thumb. So I was an easy target, right? And this kid, this was the same kid that had spit on me. I remember that very, very vividly. He was picking on me one day, and I looked at him, and I very I was trying to stand up for myself and like kind of like through tears told him, I was like, you need to back off, you know? So he didn't really take me seriously.
Right.
And he grabbed me by the throat and he shoved me up against the locker, smashed my head on the locker. And he's like, what are you going to do about it, white boy? And mind you, I had been in martial arts for 5 years.
Right,
at
already.
this point. I was already like ranked in the state in my division. So, but that didn't teach me anything about bullying, which will lead me to my unorthodox approach later. But anyway, he slammed me up against the locker and said, what are you going to do about it, white boy? And I snapped. And I grabbed his arm and I did a shoulder lock. I went under it. I did a shoulder lock that I had done probably 1,000 times. And I slammed his face up against the locker. And it happened that fast. It was in between classes. And this was Cary Middle School. 2,600 students between 6th grade and 8th grade. Right? 8 of us were white.
Wow.
I remember that because I got made fun of for it, right? But it happened so fast. And at that moment, like my courage, like the seed for that courage kind of got planted. And it was amazing how much respect I had the next day. Because I didn't beat the kid up.
No.
I just slammed him back and I was like, what? And everybody around me saw it. They were like, oh, snap, white boy. Oh, you know. And after that, I was like, this is what happens when you stand up for yourself. I was like, this is what it takes. Like, this is all it took to get some of that respect. All I had to do was like throw this back at people. So fast forward a little bit, I started becoming the bully because I was like, all right,
I got this.
Like, okay, now I know this is what it takes to get respect from people. So if that's what I have to do to get respect, this is what I need to do to other people.
So you swung from one end of the pendulum to the other.
Real quick. real quick. So once that got established, I started getting the crap beat out of me pretty regularly. And I was like, well, if I don't stand up for myself, I get beat up. And I started standing up for myself, and now I'm getting like, this sucks. Like what do I do? So eventually things kind of teetered out, and I took my place on the totem pole or the hierarchy or wherever the hell I was at that middle school, and I managed to survive middle school. High school, the beginning of high school wasn't much better. Hell, most of high school wasn't that much better. But I managed to have an outlet for that aggression. I was competing really heavily in the Taekwondo circuit, and I was playing ice hockey. So I was fighting all the time in an acceptable area.
Right.
So I guess that made it okay. And that's kind of my fighting career right there. Did that answer your question about the whole bullying thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so once I started this business and got this like vision for empowering people, I was like, I have this really unique perspective. And because I've been bullied and I've been the bully. So I was like, how do we stop that? So the gist of it is like everybody has bullied someone in some capacity.
Yes.
You have used your strength, your willpower, your skill set to elevate yourself over another human being to some degree. We have all done it. So I was like, okay, well, how do I stop that? And that whole like life or death is in the power of what you say thing kept coming back. So I was like, okay, so I really need to focus on like what's being said and how we're responding to it. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you have to deliver this information in different ways to specifically different age groups. And I'm still learning like as I go about this. So, you know, with little bitty precious innocent children, you know, typically most of the time they're not the victims of bullying, they're the victims of abuse.
Yes.
Which is a whole nother can of worms that we'll go into later, because I also teach an anti-abduction class for little bitty kids. That's another podcast.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. But for the bullying thing, that typically occurs Well, hell, it never goes away.
No.
Which
I'm
is
42 years old.
right.
No.
It never. I mean, you experienced that recently with losing your job, which of course you now know is such a wonderful thing because you wouldn't be sitting here doing this with me.
I know.
If that hadn't happened. So you're talking about me stepping out. Look what you're doing. Like, this is amazing. But focusing primarily on bullying for kids, because I've seen it start as early as like at 5, even before kids go to school. Because I mean, it happens with like older siblings, younger siblings, and then of course like anytime, this kind of goes back to like my middle school experience. Like anytime there's a minority, there's always or you're different in some kind of way. There's always going to be like some sort of abuse of power, right? So in kindergarten, when this is like the first time for a lot of kids to be exposed to a large group environment where there's naturally going to be kids that are bigger, smarter, stronger, and they start to figure that out. They start to, I mean, they do what kids do. They push the boundaries and figure out what they can get away with certain
teachers
people.
And individuals.
You know, exactly. So, you know, you shove your buddy to see, you know, what happens. And he shoves you back and you're like, okay. And I've learned that when I shove this person, they shove me back. So that's as far as I'm going to go. But if I want a toy from this kid, I can shove him down and I can take it and they're just going to go cry and I get what I want. Right? I mean, that's a very like black and white way of looking at it. Yeah, but it's a learned behavior. So I had to start first with the fact that 9 times out of 10, nobody wakes up and says, you know what? I think I'm going to be an asshole to everybody I run into today. Like, very few people consciously make that choice. Like, they might unconsciously go about their day that way, but few people wake up and go, you know what? I'm just going to be rude and mean to everybody. So one of the tactics that I use for the kids, well, the first one is just ignore them. Right. Because everyone has a bad day. Right. Everyone has a bad moment. Yep. Myself included. If I find myself, you know, being mean to somebody, you know, I would really like the opportunity to be given the benefit of the doubt and alter my behavior, right? So the first step is like, if someone's being rude, just ignore them. I don't go too much into like the inner depths of like, you don't know what that person's going through, blah blah, because
they're too little.
They don't have, a lot of them don't have enough life experience to have that empathy. So you just say, you know, just ignore them. Like it's better to just walk away, leave it alone, and separate yourself from them. So if you can do that, great. And then the next step is what I call sarcastic non-compliance, which is just a fancy way. Very well. Well, thank you very much. It's just saying it's responding to a threat in a way that's unexpected. So if someone's deliberately being rude to me, it's the Texas equivalent of, oh, bless your heart.
That's it.
Yeah, and if you're from Texas, you know exactly what that can mean. Saying bless your heart to the person, you know, who cut you off on the highway. Like, you're saying bless your heart, but we all know what you're actually saying.
We know what you're saying.
So it's that kind of like, okay, I'm not even gonna like give you my time because of the way that you're acting. So
I look at people, peanut butter, turn around my way, and they're like, what?
It's a disarmament of the reaction they're expecting, and that can come in about a lot of ways. And if you just kind of like smile and go, okay, yeah, you're clearly having a bad day, and I'm not going to engage you in your bad day. I'm just going to deliberately ignore it. So that's step 2, and then step 3 is actually calling them out on being a bully, and this is huge. Like I read this in like an anti-bullying book. I really wish I could think of the person's name and give them credit for it, because I did not come up with this. But the verbiage that you use is, you're being a bully and you need to stop.
Really? Just that easy?
Just that. And it's because like 9 times out of 10,
maybe they don't realize. Like
you don't realize you're behaving that way. And I don't want to be I don't want to manipulate somebody with my behavior to like get my way. I remember in my hiatus when I got fat and happy, I was working for a flooring company, and I was doing my best to help this guy, and he was just not having it. Like, I was the dude that he was just going to ream into that day. And he was letting me have it. And I had been in prior working relationships where I had allowed that abuse to continually come at me. And it took a conscious effort to not be treated that way anymore. And I promised myself when I was removed from that relationship that I wasn't going to let anybody talk to me like that again. So all of the original walls started going up, like, I deserve this because I didn't do X, Y, and Z, and this person's behavior at me is justified because I didn't respond the way that I was supposed to. And then I was like, no, like, I'm doing everything that I can to help this person. And I said something along the lines of, are you an asshole to everyone who tries to help you, or is it just me? And he stopped and he said, you're right, I'm sorry. And it blew me away. I was like, I mean, I shouldn't have verbalized it that way.
But still.
But I went back to that experience and I was like, I called him out on being a bully because that's how he was acting.
Right.
And once he realized that I was right about the way he was behaving, he totally shifted his mind and his behavior toward me. And I was like, that's huge.
That is huge.
That's a huge moment. So I never thought I would learn that self-defense technique working at a flooring company. But that's what I learned from that encounter. So, and then I read about it again somewhere else, and I was like, how huge is that?
That is huge.
Just say, you're being a bully, you should probably quit behaving this way. Because, like I said, 9 times out of 10, you don't wake up and say, I'm going to be a jerk to everybody today, and I'm going to continue acting this way. So, stopping them in that way has proved to be really useful. So I educate the kids on those top 3 things, right? Ignore them, sarcastic noncompliance, and then call them out. Be like, hey, I should probably add, like, lovingly call them out.
Like,
but
that's this morning.
Yeah, seriously. But I mean, that's a bold step for most adults. Like, how do you lovingly tell someone, quit being an asshole?
I don't think, and I didn't learn how to do that until I became more self-confident in myself,
right?
And knew that I deserved the best from people,
right?
And consciously know, because my experience, I always try to assume that someone's coming and woke up and everybody wanted to have a good day today. Everybody wanted to have a good day. Something happened in their life. Their dog died. Their mother's in the hospital. Something is going on where they cut you off and they give you the finger. I mean, whatever happens. And so, but sometimes you just want to call your friends out, and sometimes your coworkers or even your boss. Hey, you okay? Do we need to hang up and try this again?
Yeah, sure.
Because it doesn't sound like you're in a really great place.
Right.
Yeah, and
I'm going to give you a minute.
Right. Because I had the same thing on one of my employees call me on our one-on-one, and she was just like, and I knew she's normally very high active, like high personality, but it was nasty. I said, Robin, what is going on with you today, child? What is happening? She was like, I quit smoking today. Like,
that'll do it.
Why did you lead with that, woman?
Oh, my goodness.
She was like, am I that bad? I'm like, do you have gum?
And a cup of coffee.
Right?
Oh, man.
Go do that and then come back and we'll retry. She was like, shit, I'm so sorry. But, people sometimes, like you said, just don't know.
Yeah.
And
we all have those moments.
Right, we do. So that's great. I'm going to have to put those on the screen so on the bullying side, middle school, because I was in the same position you were in a middle school. I got shipped from the west end of Beaumont to the south end of Beaumont because that's when they were doing the ping pong stuff. So I was shipped to the south end of Beaumont. So I went to Oda Middle School, and I was the minority in the middle school. And mine were more of like grown boys trying to put their hands on me.
Right.
And then I had girls who tried to beat me up. And I had my moment where I just was done. And we were in the portable buildings where it's all dark and there's hardly any lights. And we threw down.
Right.
And that's what happened. And then the guy that I was, supposedly dating in middle school yanked me up, threw me inside of a classroom, and so I wouldn't get in trouble.
That was nice.
But the respect that happened after that, but I didn't go to the other pendulum, though. I just kind of stayed in the middle and stayed low and calm, but made some good friends after that, though.
Right? Me too.
So what about middle school and high school when it starts getting physical? Because that's when the fights start happening.
Absolutely. So if so many things are happening in between middle school and high school, because, you are in the throes of puberty.
Yeah.
right there, and sexual identity, and just, I mean, you're
Pecking
figuring,
orders.
yeah, I mean, you're figuring out so much about yourself and your social dynamic that, I mean, I like eventually, you know, it's going to get physical.
Yeah.
So this is where I believe that a really good like family dynamic makes a huge difference, because when you can have conversations about these events before they transpire, you can plan to respond to them. So this is where I believe having, you know, two sets of parents speaking life into your kid, telling them what they can expect, and helping them at least navigate through it a little bit versus getting blindsided by it can make a really big difference. So having a good family dynamic, in my view, is part of self-defense.
It is.
Because you've got, you don't think about this when you're 13, but you've got parents that are older and wiser and smarter than you and know what's coming. So being able to at least like have that, having those conversations, not just about like what's happening to your body, but about like things that are going to start transpiring in your relationships, that can make a difference. That can help make a difference. I don't know about you. I didn't listen to my parents when I was 13, 14, 15, 16,
I
17.
was the smartest person in the universe, and they were dumb.
Oh my God. I heard someone say the older you get, the smarter your parents become.
Yes.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
The frontal lobe doesn't fully develop for girls until 24, 25,
Right.
and that's the reasoning. And then for boys, it's like 25, 26, and at 24 years old, it hit, and I had moved up here. Called my mom. It's like, Mom. I was like,
I love you so much.
She was
I've had similar experiences. But to answer your question, like when it gets physical, so if you've had these conversations with, I mean, not your parents, but like hopefully your parents, but with a social group that loves you and cares about you, you learn how to set boundaries.
Right.
And when you learn how to set boundaries, like, you have to defend those boundaries.
Agreed.
I mean, it's like a country.
Yep.
Like 9/11 is a perfect example. Yep. Don't start none, won't be none.
Right.
You started some,
and there'll be some,
and there's gonna be some, right? And I mean, that's a very extreme example.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, if you get in my face and you punch me, you better knock me out.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be some ramifications for this. So, and I believe that this is especially important for young women because guys are dumb. We're so dumb for so long. Especially if we don't have the proper guidance.
The step to getting better is admittance.
Oh my God. So, I mean, and I think, what's the average age group for your podcast?
It is anywhere between 20 to 40 or 50.
Okay, so between the ages of 13 and 21, boys are walking erections.
Yes, they are dumb.
Oh my God, and that's primarily what they think with if they don't have, you know, a good, you know, good guidance. So when you're 13 years old, you think it's okay to slap a girl on the butt because again, like. You're figuring out what these boundaries are, and if the first time you get slapped in the face, you figure out real quick what that boundary is, because that type of behavior is not okay.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, especially in this country, most boys aren't taught that.
No.
So they're figuring out what those boundaries are on their own.
Like my kid tells everybody if he touches a girl like that, I would kill him. He was like, my mom would kill me.
Absolutely. My mom would kill me if I did that and if I didn't intervene if I saw someone else doing this. Because that's huge.
It's huge.
Suspend me for 3 days. I'll take that for standing up for someone else. It's huge. And the reason I bring that particular extreme up is this terrible statistic I learned recently. 1 in 3 women in Denton County is a victim of domestic violence.
It's huge.
It's huge. And I truly believe that it starts around this time frame that we're talking about, because you get the boys that don't have this proper guidance that push that boundary, that like, you know, accidentally try to grab a girl's breast or grab her butt or her crotch. I mean, you're like, every woman I know has a story about this in middle school or high school about this happening, and it's because those boundaries weren't respected by these boys because they weren't taught them, and they weren't enforced by the girls because they weren't taught them either.
Right.
So now you have this clashing dynamic, and it's huge.
It's like a perfect storm.
Yeah, and you have these men growing up thinking, or these boys that grow up into large boys because men don't act that way.
Right.
Number one, and these women that are these girls that grow up to be girls because they're not taught how to be women. And I truly believe that when it starts there, okay, I got away with this.
How much more can I get?
How far can I push it? And that's when things start to get violently physical.
Yep. And
that's a problem.
It's
a huge problem. 1 in 3? Are you freaking kidding me?
That's a lot.
That's ridiculous.
That's a lot.
My one of my sisters, who you should have on your podcast, by the way, because she's a freaking hero. She works specifically with victims of domestic violence and helps them get help and guidance through the legal process. The stories this girl has blow my mind. And this particular sister, I've got many of them, as I mentioned earlier, but she called me, and I don't think she would mind me sharing the story, and you can edit it out because I'll ask her permission first, but you can edit this out. But she called me and she was like, I need you to take me to the gun range and teach me how to shoot because I'm scared. And I was like, what are you doing Saturday? Like, let's go.
Yep.
Let's go, because violence is a real thing.
It is.
And if somebody gets in your face and crosses a line that you're not comfortable with them crossing, you need to be able to respond accordingly.
Yep.
And the very last resort to that is violence. I mean, I say in my self-defense class, violence is a tool that everybody has.
Yeah.
And if you're not told that
it's okay to do that,
protect yourself. Exactly. If you don't believe in your own value and that you're worth protecting, you're not going to protect yourself.
No, you're not.
Which is part of the reason, and this is a very large general statement, but it's part of the reason that there's so much domestic violence.
There is.
And the woman that gave me this stat worked in Denton with women of domestic violence abuse, and I loved what she was doing for the community and everything that she was saying. And I went up to her after one of her talks one day, and I said, I would love to get with you and set up like some sort of self-defense class. And she looked at me and she said, don't take this the wrong way, but we shouldn't have to have people like you. And she's right.
She's right.
She's so right.
She's right. You know, because when young girls, and this is what I tell Reese all the time, I was like, young girls are being taught by some of their parents that if he pulls your pigtail, that means he likes you. If he picks with you and messes with you and calls you ugly, that means he likes you. So then that gets embedded and ingrained in a girl from a very young age.
Right.
No, he's not supposed to pull your pigtail. No, he's not supposed to hit you. And if he does, hit him back.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, that's
because it starts small.
It starts small, and then
it escalates.
It's what you allow later on, and so then you've got boys who aren't raised like my son. And who is... I
wasn't raised that way.
Yeah, well, but you figured it out.
Much later.
You learned it later, but you figured it out. But it's, you know, like Reese, you know, he just had a situation on the bus because he's befriended a really good friend of his, and they've become real close. And a bunch of boys started talking about how he's gay with his friend, and he's just, this is a friend. And it just started a chant on the bus.
Right.
And Reese was like, really, dudes? But this other kid had a panic attack on the bus, and it just made it worse. So finally, Reese was yelled at him. He was like, this is not nice. You're rude. It's ugly.
You're being a bully.
Go
you need
away.
to stop.
Go away. Leave me alone. And then he went and talked to the coaches about it.
You should be very proud.
I am.
I know you are. That's amazing.
I am. But it's, you know, it doesn't stop.
And to answer your question about self-defense, that is self-defense.
It
like
is.
That right there. Because, I mean, it's we can talk about what to do if someone, you know, pulls a knife on you or a gun on you or tries to punch you in the face or whatever. We can what if it all day long. But at the end of the day, self-defense is protecting yourself.
It is.
And you can do that proactively.
Yeah.
Or you can do it after the fact.
Like walking through the freaking parking lot with your head and your phone.
Oh, that's a big one for me.
Oh my gosh, Chris.
That's huge.
How many times I tell women, have your keys in your hand if you don't have one of those remote open, and put your phone in your purse.
Right.
Hold on to your purse and scan the parking lot.
Right.
I mean, self-awareness is huge in self-defense.
Huge. It. I would say it's 90%,
Mm-hmm.
if not more. I'm sure there would be like military guys that teach this stuff regular. They'd probably say it's closer to 98%, because military guys specialize in that 2% category of where there's no time for talking.
Right.
Like you have there's this gentleman named Tim Larkin that I follow. A lot of his teaching has had a lot of influence on what I teach. And he teaches just flat out how to kill people with your bare hands.
Right.
And he's very good at it. And one of the things that he distinguishes is the difference between antisocial behavior and asocial behavior. Antisocial behavior is still communication.
Okay.
It's bad communication,
but it's still
communication. Asocial interaction is when the communication is stopped and violence has ensued in some way. And he also separates the difference between antisocial violence and asocial violence. Antisocial violence is also acceptable. Antisocial violence is like a boxing match with like, that the media hypes up. Like a few years ago, who was it? Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
Right. That huge, all that trash talking, and then the fight. Like nothing really violent happened in that fight.
Right.
Because it's a controlled environment.
Yep. They're professionals.
All right.
This is what they train for.
Right. They're professionals. I mean, they probably had a beer beforehand, and they were like, "Hey, you want to make a lot of money?"
Right. It doesn't matter who wins.
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the point in which violence occurs is when. And Tim Larkin says this a lot. He's like, violence occurs when you need immediate medical attention, or when something something has happened physically to your person that demands immediate medical response, or you're going to die. So, a collapsed trachea, a punctured lung, a ruptured liver, something like that, where your life is in imminent danger. Not a bar fight,
right?
Where your buddies are holding you back. And you're like, what, bro? And a couple of punches, land, and you both get kicked out for, I believe the term is like disorderly conduct, right? Yeah, like you get a slap on the hand, but like, even that is like antisocial violence, right? It's where it's escalated to blows to try to make the other person agree with your point of view,
right?
So and this comes back to my like your self-awareness aspect of self-defense. You want to see a fight? Go to a bar where a lot of pubescent men are drinking with scantily dressed women. You're gonna see a fight.
That's an explosion waiting to happen.
It's gonna happen. It's gasoline on a fire, man. Like it's gonna happen. So if you want to avoid a fight or fights around it, like just don't be there, right? So when I'm talking about self-defense, I'm talking about when you either believe your life is in imminent danger or you are in imminent danger.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
No, self-awareness is huge. I mean, when I took I was accepted in the FBI Citizens Academy back in 2016. And even walking out from the Dallas FBI facility late at night, because we would take a class every Thursday and we wouldn't get out till almost 10 o'clock at night. So it's late, but I'm in a gated facility that has a armed, guard, like FBI agents everywhere. And so I stop in the lobby and I pull out my keys, I zip up my purse and I have it. And, I have one of the FBI agents, Bull, Bull, escorting me out. And he was like, you go, girl.
Good. Yeah, he's paying attention.
Yeah, he's like,
that's cool.
I like that. Who taught you that? And I was like, my mama.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
But it's that self-awareness and the cell phone and making sure that you're aware of your surroundings and know what's going on, even though you're enjoying your time with your family or your kids. I still, when we used to go to the movies, I still scoped out exits.
Yeah.
I still made sure that I knew where the exits were so I could make sure that just in case something happened, it was just sad to say, that I would be able to get my family out and have that conversation with Reese. Get out, there's the exit. You worry about you, I'll figure out where I need to go from there.
Right.
And it's kind of it's huge for women. My mom always says use your gut too.
Yeah.
As a female, I think God gave us a gut.
Your
feeling.
instincts are valuable.
Very valuable. If it doesn't feel right, turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a part of our survival mechanism that God has given us, is that little inner voice that yells at us. No!
Right? That's important.
So on the other side of martial arts, tell me about your classes, what classes you offer. And I know you have a special coming up this month. So give us a little information about that.
Sure, absolutely. So for those that are interested in my formal training, I guess, I have a black belt in both Taekwondo and Hapkido. For those that are interested, it's Chungdukwan Taekwondo and Jinjungkwan Hapkido. I won't even get off on what all of that means. But I've got black belts in both of those. But I focus primarily on the practical application of self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what's called pumse. In Korean, that roughly translates to forms. In karate, it's called katas. You may have heard that word. It's just a series of moves that help you practice your technique and so on and so forth. And it's been, and golly, probably since the mid-70s, it's been used as a form of like competition.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I competed in it for a really long time. But when you take something that's used for practical self-defense and you turn it into a competitive art, you're worried about points. You're not worried about protecting yourself. Right. Which is why I got the crap beat out of me in middle school after I was already halfway to black belt. Because I was focusing on how my stance needed to be and where my chambering hand was, and then my arm needed to be at this degree angle, this far outside of my leg, and this. Who gives a crap? Like, that doesn't help me if someone's trying to punch me in the mouth. Right? So I actually took it as a huge compliment that you considered my approaches unorthodox, because I didn't want some kid to grow up the way I did in a martial arts environment
and not know.
Yeah, and not know, because I would always ask questions like, well, why am I in this stance? Because I told you to. Yes, sir. When you freaking...
That doesn't work well with people like me and you.
Well, when you're 9 years old and a Vietnam Marine is yelling at you, you say yes, sir, and you do what you're told, right? And there's
why?
Exactly. And while I believe that children need to do what their parents and their superiors tell them to do, there's no harm in asking why.
Right.
It reminds me of that scene in Karate Kid where Mr. Miyagi is like, okay, first rule, karate, something like, no question. No question. I say, you do. And I'm like, flashbacks coming back to me, like I'm just going to do it. And the thought behind that is, I have your best intentions in my mind and my heart, and if I'm asking you to do something, it's because I know it's good for you.
Right.
Like that's where that comes from, and that's great. But when you have an instructor who doesn't have your best intentions at heart, or has an ego that's so big, they just need that authoritative position to feel redeemed about themselves. Like you just do what you're told, and I didn't want the kids to just do what they were told because they were told to do it. So I explained, we keep our hands up like this because getting punched in the face sucks.
Yeah, I know.
Why does getting punched in the face suck? Well, let me show you. And I say that in all seriousness because to answer your question, we start as early as 4.
Right.
But I take a little pool noodle. I learned this from a boxing instructor. To learn head movement. And the pool noodle is just a nice friendly reminder to get your freaking head out of the way. And if you make a mistake, the consequences aren't bad.
It doesn't hurt, but it still reminds you.
Exactly.
It feels like, oh.
And you know what? That works great with a 5-year-old.
Yeah, it does.
It works great with an adult. Yeah. And then you can gradually start to escalate let me back up. You increase in understanding. Like, you need to move your head like this, because if this is someone's fist flying at your face and you don't move, you get hit with it.
Right.
And when you're 5, it's funny. Oh, I got hit with the noodle. You know, when you're 21
No.
and you get clocked, you know, from behind in a
Right.
bar fight, it ain't funny
No.
anymore.
No.
You know, your ears ringing and your jaw hurts for 6 weeks.
Yep.
And flashbacks again. But you know what I mean?
Yep.
So so the practical application is so important. That's just one of many examples. But we teach it at age appropriate levels.
Yep.
You know, with a teenager, I can teach the same, like your son is a perfect example. Hey, keep your hands up like this. Why? If I give him a light little tap in the face with a nice big thick boxing glove on, it's enough to go, you just punched me in my face. I'm okay, but you seriously violated like my personal space.
I get a crack out of it because you're teaching them not just that, but also kind of a little bit of self-awareness.
Sure.
Is because you're coming up behind him sometimes and you give him like a jab and he's like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Right.
But then he's watching what he's doing with the other classmate, but then also figuring out how he needs to watch you to make sure he's prepared for the next job.
Absolutely. It's that's about self-awareness and just paying attention, keeping your head on a swivel. It's just learned at a different level. But honestly, none of that matters if they don't believe you care about them.
That's the big one.
And that's where the love and the encouragement comes in.
Huge.
I mean, I spend to answer your question about the promotional, we're giving away 30 days for free.
Okay.
And anybody who mentions your radio show and Fight Right Martial Arts from here now will get 30 days for free.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link or whatever. But that has no expiration date on it. And I forget where I was going with that. No, here we go. So I spend that first 30 days going like, look, I love you and I care about you because God made you the way that you are.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're the most athletic person in the world. It's or not. Like, it's totally irrelevant. Like, you are your own unique individual. God made you that way. I accept you that way. Even if I want to drop kick you across the room sometimes. Right. But I'm going to help you become the best version of yourself to the best of my ability. So I spend the first however long the intro is last. It could be 2 classes, it could be 30 days of class, it's really however long that individual needs. And honestly, the people that don't stay after the first 30 days, they don't need to be there anyway.
Right. They're not ready.
Because I believe that if I'm going to help you become the best version of yourself, we're going to have some hard conversations. And that means hard conversations between me and the kid. That means hard conversations between me and the parent. That means hard conversations with the kid and the parent about, you know, modifying behavior. I mean, you've talked about this with a lot of the work that you do with kids. And those are the conversations that across this country aren't being had. And I mean, yeah, I charge money for what I do because I'm freaking good at what I do.
Right. Well,
I've earned it.
You have a family to feed too.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's the reason why behind what you do, what you do.
I don't need your business.
Right.
I want a relationship with you to be able to help you become the best version of yourself. And what's really cool are the people that love God and love their kids. They see that. When they come in, they don't see me. They see what God's doing through me and my staff and my wife and the people that I choose to keep in my life. They see that. And that, I believe, is what keeps people coming back. And then we punch each other in the face, and it's fun.
It's fun. Well, and my favorite part is I always come in on the end of the littles that you're finishing up with before Reese does his class. And you have a word of the month. And you get them to learn words, like this is the word of the month, the definition. So last month was responsibility. And their answers were adorable.
They are.
But you did call one of them out for a BS answer because she said she had to clean her whole house.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it was cute because you told them to go back and talk to their mom and dad about what their responsibilities are at that age and what they're supposed to be responsible for. And every month you dug it into their little brain every day, responsibility. And I just think it's so cute and adorable. And then what's the last thing you get them to say at the end of their...
I learned this from a fantastic friend of mine. Here's a shout out to Shad McChesney. I met Shad working in another martial arts school, and he came through, and he and I have just become real close. And he played college football. He moves like a big cat. He's just smooth and finesse and dangerous.
Oh,
I mean, I look at this guy and I'm like, I'm so glad you're my friend because you're a scary, scary man. Beside the point, but he ended up working at the same martial arts school as me. He's a black belt several times over in I forget what style of karate. He'll make fun of me for not remembering it on this podcast later. But he used to make the class, give them a thumbs up and point at themselves and say, "I'm awesome. I'm awesome." And at first I thought that was kind of arrogant. Like, you're teaching kids to think more highly of themselves than they are. But going back in my quiet time and reading through scripture, that it's in Psalms. I'm terrible with the chapter of the verse. Okay. You can Google it. It's I'm fearful and wonderfully made, which you could translate to I'm awesome. So if it's biblical, I'm going to support it. So I was like, that's so cool. I mean, way to teach the kids from a young age, I'm valuable. Yep. And I tell everybody who comes through here, everything that we do has a biblical foundation to it. And I try to be very deliberate about those things. So that's just affirming in who God made you to be. You're awesome. You're awesome. You're amazing. And you need to believe that before you can become the best version of yourself, which comes back to the word that we got for empowering our community, which is speaking life into people. And when you speak life into people, they start speaking it to themselves, and faith comes by hearing. And when you start saying what God says about you and you hear it through yourself, that's when it gets down into your heart and you start believing it. And when you believe that, then you understand how valuable you are. And when someone crosses those boundaries, you're well within your right to keep those boundaries set. You're right. Dang! Isn't that cool? Full circle. Wait, wrap it up. Kids. Woo! That's amazing. Wrapped it up. Oh man, take a picture. Well, we're gonna put a bow on that one. Thank you so much for joining me. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, and y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into my podcast, Be the Hero and Rescue Yourself with Kelly Fullman. If you enjoyed listening to my podcast or watching this YouTube video, please follow or subscribe to my channel and walk with me through my journey of celebrating my very own heroes and an opportunity to learn the valuable lessons they taught me over the years, which allowed me to gain the courage to wear my very own cape and be the hero of my life. You can also follow me on Instagram at kfullman, that's KFUHLMAN, at Facebook, /KFullman1, or on LinkedIn, Kelly Fullman, MBA. Also, please leave your comments below because I see feedback as a gift, and it will guide me on how to help you gain the courage you need to rescue yourself. Be sweet, y'all. Thanks.